The third labor of Heracles had no monster in it, no fangs, no venom, nothing that wanted him dead, just a deer. And it came closer to breaking him than the lion or the hydra ever did. Because here is the cruelty of it. The deadliest archer alive, a man now carrying arrows that could kill anything they scratched, was about to spend a full year chasing an animal he was not allowed to harm. He had strangled the Nemean lion and worn it home. He had burned the hydra down to its immortal head and buried it under a boulder. 2 labors done, except the king counted 1. The hydra Eurystheus ruled didn't count. His nephew Iolaus had helped. So the third command came up out of the buried bronze jar where the king of Tiryns hid from his own champion. And it was nothing like the first 2. Don't kill anything, Heracles. Bring her back alive. Her the Ceryneian Hind, a deer swifter than any arrow, with antlers of solid gold and hooves of bronze. Apollodorus writes it plainly, golden-horned, sacred to Artemis, goddess of the hunt. The poet Callimachus tells the older story. There were 5 of these creatures, once deer larger than bulls, grazing on a black-pebbled riverbank in the mountains. Artemis saw them, caught 4 with her bare hands, and harnessed them to her golden chariot. The 5th got away. She fled across the river and vanished onto the hill of Cerynea in Arcadia. And Callimachus names the reason in 5 quiet words that change the whole story. She escaped by Hera's design. Read that again. Hera, the goddess who bred the lion and raised the hydra as weapons against Heracles, planted this deer years before he was ever born. The first 2 labors were aimed at his body and his mind. This one was aimed at his soul. Because look at the trap. Kill the hind, even wound her, and he commits sacrilege against Artemis, a goddess who once turned a hunter into a stag and let his own hounds run him down. Come home without her, and the labors never end. He cannot win by winning. Pindar adds one more layer. The hind, he says, wore a dedication. Tyegeite offered me to Artemis. Tyegeite was a nymph the goddess had once hidden from Zeus by turning her into a doe. This animal wasn't just sacred. She was a thank-you gift between immortals. So Heracles did the only thing left. He set down the club that killed the lion, shouldered his bow, and started walking. Apollodorus says the chase lasted 1 entire year. Sit with that, a year of ridgelines and riverbeds, a year of glimpsing gold through the trees and arriving to find nothing. The man who solved the lion in a night and the hydra in an afternoon spent 4 full seasons failing at a deer. And the chase left the map. Pindar swears Heracles followed her north past the sources of the Danube, all the way to the Hyperboreans, the blessed people who lived beyond the north wind, where the sun never quite set. And here's the detail most people miss. Female deer don't grow antlers. In the entire deer family, there is one exception: reindeer, Arctic animals. Some scholars think this myth carries a memory of the far north, thousands of years old, that behind the golden hind stands some traveler's tale of reindeer country. Somewhere past the edge of the known world, the hind turned for home. Worn down at last by the year, Apollodorus says, she fled back south into Arcadia toward a river called the Ladon. And at that river, the greatest archer of his age took the hardest shot of his life. Not the killing shot, the opposite. As she swam the Ladon, he loosed a single clean arrow that passed between bone and tendon and pinned her forelegs. The tellings insist on the detail, not 1 drop of blood. There's a gentler version. Some said he simply found her at the end of the year asleep under a tree and dropped a net. Either way, every source agrees on what mattered. He took her alive, unbroken, unbulled. He lifted her across his shoulders, a deer sacred to heaven, warm and breathing against the lion's skin, and turned south for Mycenae. He had walked a year for this animal. The hard part was about to be the walk home. Because on the road through Arcadia, the light changed, and standing in his path was a young woman with a silver bow, and beside her, a young man with a golden one, Artemis, and her twin brother, Apollo. 3 labors in, this was the first time a labor had put a god in front of him. Not an omen, not a dream. The huntress herself, eye to eye, asking one question: why is my deer on your shoulders? Understand what that moment was. Artemis did not give warnings. Actaeon glimpsed her bathing, and she turned him into a stag for his own hounds. Niobe mocked her mother, and Artemis and Apollo emptied their quivers into Niobe's children. Heracles stood there holding her sacred hind like a poacher caught at dawn. And the strongest man in the world did the one thing nobody expected. He didn't fight and he didn't run. He told the truth. The labor was not his choice. Eurystheus commanded it, the oracle bound him to it, and behind all of it stood Hera. If there was blame, it belonged higher up. Apollodorus gives the verdict in a single line. She heard him and her anger softened. "Take the hind to Mycenae," she said, "show your king, but she comes back to me, alive and unhurt. Break that promise and no labor will save you." Back in Mycenae, Eurystheus took one look at the impossible animal and decided the labor came with a prize. The hind would join his menagerie, he announced. A golden horn trophy, property of the crown, which was a problem because she was already promised. So Heracles agreed with one condition. He had carried her a year's worth of miles. The king could walk across his own courtyard. "Come take her from my hands," he said. And Eurystheus, or the man he dared to send, reached out. And Heracles let go, one heartbeat early. The hind was out of the courtyard before anyone finished drawing breath, gone north like a struck spark, home to her goddess. Heracles shrugged. "You were too slow." Remember, this is the king who voided the Hydra on a technicality. Now Heracles had answered with a technicality of his own. The labor complete, the goddess satisfied, the king empty-handed. The strongman was learning to play the game. Look at the shape of it. The lion taught him that strength has limits. The Hydra taught him to think. The hind taught him the rarest thing of all, restraint, a year of patience, from the man whose whole legend was the lack of it. Hera had aimed at his body, then his mind, then his conscience, and he had passed all three trials, the last one with a goddess as his witness. On Olympus, the Queen of Heaven studied the board again. The next labor would go back to teeth and tusks, but it would cost him more than any monster yet. The fourth command sounded familiar: bring it back alive. The Erymanthian boar, a beast the size of a bull, ranging a mountain deep in snow. But the monster isn't the story this time. On the road to that mountain, Heracles stops for a meal with an old friend, and the poisoned arrows come out of the quiver. Before labor 4 is over, the Hydra's venom will claim its first 2 victims. Neither one is the boar. Follow the story, Heracles is only getting started.